Let me ask you something really disturbing. Why do ordinary people, and even smart, educated ones, cheer for leaders who lie to them, leaders who twist facts, mock the truth, and somehow still manage to get a standing ovation? We've all seen it. Doctors defending unproven nonsense, lawyers blindly chanting for corrupt politicians, professionals excusing behavior they'd never tolerate from anyone else. It makes you stop and ask, what's really going on? Because this isn't just about intelligence. This is something deeper, something darker. It's the same deadly virus I've talked about before, the one Dietrich Bonhoeffer warned us about. But clearly, we need to go further. So today, I want to explore a different angle. We're going to look through the eyes of Voltaire, a man who saw, long before our time, that stupidity isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it wears a suit, sometimes it holds a microphone, and sometimes it gets elected. In this video, we're going to look at how stupidity isn't just tolerated in society. It's cultivated, grown, weaponized. We'll break down why certain leaders actually want us to stay ignorant. And we'll ask the hard question: what happens to a culture, to an entire civilization, when stupidity becomes the strategy? Noam Chomsky once said that if knowledge liberates, then keeping people stupid is a form of control. And for many leaders throughout history, that's not a flaw in the system. It is the system. Leaders, rulers, and power holders of all kinds have long understood something the public tends to forget. An ignorant population is easier to manage. You don't need brute force if people don't ask questions. You don't need a cage if no one tries to leave. Adam Smith, centuries earlier, warned that the extreme division of labor, turning people into repetitive function cogs, would turn them into creatures as stupid and ignorant as it is possible for a human being. That's not just economic theory, that's strategy. In fact, stupidity, or more accurately, the cultivation of ignorance, behaves like a virus. Authoritarian regimes have always understood the power of ignorance. Whether it was Hitler's propaganda machine, Stalin's censorship, or the modern-day manipulation in our current states, the tactic stays the same. Flood the public with comforting lies, simplify complex issues, and keep people busy, but not aware. And this isn't limited to dictatorships. Even in so-called democracies, the virus spreads. Isaac Asimov warned of it decades ago. There is a cult of ignorance in the United States, and there always has been. The strain of anti-intellectualism, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. That mindset is dangerous, and it's contagious. When people begin to believe that opinions carry the same weight as evidence, or that gut instinct matters more than data, they stop listening to experts. They stop questioning authority. They become easier to manage. And that's exactly what some leaders want. Propaganda by repetition. Voltaire said it. The more often a stupidity is repeated, the more it gets the appearance of wisdom. And leaders exploit this. They repeat simple emotional slogans. Familiarity starts to feel like truth. And once the lie feels true, it spreads faster than fact. And people start believing they are smart even though they are not. You've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, a bias where the less someone knows, the more confident they are. Leaders feed into this every day. They offer easy answers to complex problems, giving people the illusion of understanding. It's empowering to feel like you figured it out without experts. But that's the trap. People don't just become uninformed, they become proudly uninformed. They become more loyal to their certainty than to actual truth. Put it all together, and what you get isn't just a passive population, it's a loyal one. They don't just believe the lie, they defend it. This doesn't require mass brainwashing. Just a little neglect, a few comforting illusions. Over time, people stop noticing they're being manipulated. They become proud of their ignorance. One scholar explained it perfectly. Systemic ignorance propagated through false speech and misinformation, sustains oppressive power structures. If the truth sets people free, then power will work to obscure it. Truth is inconvenient to power. So power manufactures a population that prefers lies. And one thing that helps leaders get what they want is what I will discuss now. In today's digital world, this stupidity virus replicates through the very platforms we trust for information. Social media, designed to maximize engagement, don't discriminate between truth and lies. What gets prioritized? Content that's simple, emotionally charged, and outrage-inducing. That's why false or sensational claims travel faster than sober facts, because they're easier to digest, easier to share, and harder to forget. This amplification creates echo chambers, digital spaces where people only hear voices that echo their existing beliefs. These chambers function like petri dishes. Once a lie takes root, it gets reinforced by peers until it becomes resistant to reason. And once misinformation is emotionally internalized, facts feel like attacks. The media, both old and new, has mastered this. Slogans like, "Our leader can do no wrong," or "Group X is a threat to our values," are repeated so often on screens, in ads, and through memes that disagreeing starts to feel like heresy. This is what Voltaire warned us about. History has already shown us how this plays out when taken to its extremes. In Nazi Germany, state-controlled media relentlessly dehumanized minority groups, manufacturing hatred and obedience through constant messaging. But propaganda isn't always loud or violent. Today's more sophisticated regimes operate under what political scientists call spin dictatorships, leaders who maintain the illusion of democracy while controlling the narrative from behind the scenes. Behind the curtain, they manipulate reality. They flood airwaves with state-approved messaging, drown independent voices with bots and trolls, and subtly discredit dissenters. The public sees headlines, hears anchors, reads posts, but all from a curated script. And so, even people who think they're informed often end up repeating propaganda without realizing it. This isn't just about governments either. The rise of fake news epidemics, from bogus health cures to wild election conspiracies, shows how quickly ignorance can be manufactured and believed. One lie shared on Facebook or WhatsApp can reach millions in a night, while the truth lags behind, buried in fact checks no one reads. Each click, like, or share gives the illusion of legitimacy. Studies like those by Professor Adam Berinsky reveal that even after a lie is disproved, it lingers in public memory. Why? Because many people stop paying attention after the first impression. In this way, disinformation thrives, not just from what's said, but from what people stop caring to verify. Meanwhile, media manipulation continues on a broader scale. Some governments and interest groups outright bribe or threaten journalists to kill stories. In the past, authorities burned forbidden books. Today, they flood the zone with polished lies. They saturate media with aligned messages while ensuring that counterpoints are either discredited or ignored entirely. The effect is the same. The public consumes content that feels informative, but serves only the agenda of those in power. A society's education system is supposed to be its immune system against ignorance. But what happens when that system is deliberately weakened? When leaders slash education budgets, politicize school curriculums, or outlaw certain lines of research? They aren't just neglecting knowledge, they're cultivating ignorance. And that ignorance, once rooted, spreads like disease. History teaches us this isn't new. The so-called Dark Ages in early medieval Europe, following the fall of Rome, were not simply a lapse in progress, but a period of intentional intellectual suppression. Science and learning retreated into monasteries, while secular education nearly vanished. It wasn't an accident, it was a strategy. Ruling classes feared inquiry, so they preserved power by limiting who could think freely. We see echoes today. In modern authoritarian states, universities are tightly monitored, contact with foreign scholars is restricted, and entire fields like sociology or climate science are defunded or dismissed. Education becomes a privilege, not a right, and only the obedient are allowed to learn. Even in free societies, subtler censorship thrives. Polls have shown that only about 1% of Americans regularly read serious newspapers. Most form their worldviews through headlines, sound bites, or viral posts. Asimov once noted that only a small minority exercise their right to know, while the majority remain comfortably ignorant, not because they lack access, but because they lack the will. And here's the paradox. Education by itself doesn't cure stupidity. Sociology Wright Mills put it bluntly, no amount of learning can cure stupidity, and higher education positively fortifies it. When citizens are miseducated, or when they stop learning after school, they become even more vulnerable to manipulation. Schools may teach facts, but it's critical thinking that defends against propaganda. And without it, even educated people become pawns. In Orwell's 1984, the slogan, "Ignorance is strength," defined a world where people were told that being uninformed was patriotic. Language was distorted, history rewritten, and lies enforced until truth itself became irrelevant. Similarly, in Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury envisioned a future where books were burned and people forgot how to think. Society devolved into a culture of passive consumers, unable to process complex ideas, incapable of rebellion. In Pol Pot's Cambodia, education was outright abolished. Teachers were executed, schools shuttered, and books destroyed. The result? Societal collapse through starvation, terror, and genocide. There are more than one extreme cases, but the principle is the same. Choke the truth, and you choke humanity itself. And the decay doesn't stop at political collapse. Cultural and economic ruin follow close behind. Late-stage imperial Rome saw its civic education rot under superstition and propaganda. Democracies erode under simple slogans. And eventually societies fall into ruin not from enemies without, but from blindness within. In the end, the most effective authoritarian tool isn't the bullet or the prison, it's the lie that makes truth inconvenient. That's why education matters. Not just formal schooling, but the lifelong pursuit of truth, curiosity, and independent thought. The battle against stupidity isn't won by force, it's won by vigilance. By refusing easy answers, by rejecting comfortable lies, by choosing to know even when it's hard. Human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe.